Welcome, Bryan. Bryan is it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And Bryan is a growth mentor, speaker, author, runs multiple masterminds. And we met in a Dan Kennedy Facebook group. And Bryan's background is he helps grow and scale businesses and business owners. That's his forte. And some of the things from his background that really resonated with me is he helps entrepreneurs grow and scale the business they want, not the business they have now, right? So that's where Bryan comes in. So I'm going to talk to Bryan a little bit more about his strength or his focus right now is how to grow your business as a B2B entrepreneur or a business owner. How do you grow your business using LinkedIn? There's some of reservations about LinkedIn. Everybody assumes it's just a job site, but I think it's it's an untapped opportunity, and there's a lot of work Bryan has done it. So I want to kickstart that. Bryan, can you give us some background? Maybe I didn't capture the full essence of what you do, and then
interestingly enough, you talked about Dan Kennedy. Dan's one of my mentors. I'm actually I speak inside of the No BS Inner Circle. I run their Young Entrepreneurs program at their national conferences. So I've had a chance to get up close to Dan himself. Actually had some health issues, but is coming back. So we're thrilled about that. And about 3 years ago, I wrote a book called Stuck on First, the 9 Positions on a Playoff Ready Business, about how do you build and grow a business. And that's where I came up with the term, how do you build a business? How do you grow a business to the one you want, not the one you have? And then the other topic we talked about a lot in the book was something about so-called meaningful scale, right? Entrepreneurs, sometimes they're afraid to grow, and sometimes they're saying, well, I can't grow without money. And I'm here to do the classic Dan Kennedy, I'm just gonna call bull, because you can do what you want if you are resourceful, right? And today, more than ever, right, here we are, we're recording this on April 9th. We're in the middle of the Corona COVID-19 crisis that people are having. And I am literally having conversations with people all over the world. So the fact that your audience is largely in India is pretty interesting. I have people I talk to in Germany. I have people I talk to in Ireland. I have people I talk to all over the United States, as well as the Philippines. And everyone's feeling the same thing. What should I be doing now to protect my business? I think that's really the first thing they're thinking about. And then interestingly enough, the next step is what do I do to pivot my business, and what does that look like? And then I really think the third part of it is how can I ultimately profit from that business? So, my wife is next to me here. She's got a coaching program for interior designers, and she used those lines last night. So I stole them. They were pretty good, I understand. But interestingly, so over the last 2 years, one of the key things as a B2B growth consultant, right, I take an advisory position working with their sales leaders if they have them, or marketing teams if they have them, or most oftentimes the CEO and a few of their key execs on, what does their business look like today and what does it look like in the future? So you figure out what's that offer. And then one of the things I love about B2B is you're more often than not selling to them one time, you're selling to them over and over and over again. So most people think that it's a one and done business, but it's not. So if you have these so-called relationships with your customers, and I've been a direct sales producer. When I owned my business, I was our number one guy. When I was selling enterprise, I was the number one or number two guy everywhere I went. And it's because we had good relations. So about 2006, I started getting involved in LinkedIn just because at the time it was a job board, right? It was, I grew up in New Jersey, in New York City area. So the average CIO at the time lasted about 18 months. And if you had a good relationship and you sold expensive stuff, he brought his group of people with him from place to place, right? And that's what people think LinkedIn is about. And interesting, we talked on our pre-call about, so some people think it's just a job board, and I will tell you it is so much more. If you want to develop relationships, there's probably no better platform to be socially active and not be intrusive than LinkedIn. Now, you can be intrusive, and we'll talk about that probably later. But if you can genuinely provide value to your audience, and if your audience is a C-level or a director or a first-level manager, whoever you're selling to, LinkedIn is, you have direct access. Unlike other venues where you're going to go through some kind of gatekeeper, you're going to go through a spam filter, through email, you're going to go through the mail or FedEx packages, right? Depending on if you're a direct response guy. Raj and I are direct response people, so I'm sure he's going to teach you about the power of direct response marketing and how critical it can be. But honestly, there's no filter for the CEO. There's no filter for the CIO, because in some ways, especially today, he's probably on it because there's some concern about, well, what if I have to move on? What if my company closes, right? So there's that backdoor thing. So that's a little bit about me. I just help companies use LinkedIn in a responsible way to ultimately not, people talk about lead generation. I don't do lead generation. We don't teach lead generation. We talk about relationship generation. How can you create meaningful relationships that are long-standing and ultimately get them to take their wallets out of their back pocket and give you purchase orders and spend money with you? But how do you create long-lasting relationships?
Absolutely. I'm just going to recap what you said. Right? That's very critical. Some of the things you said is building relationship. I think whether it's direct marketing through LinkedIn or I think a lot of direct marketers have gone this pendulum swung another way where it just, the value add part is missing, more selling, and then just in your face and constantly getting there in front of people without actually providing value is where I see a lot of people but I think the market is realizing and kind of shutting them out and going back to people who just like me, like I'm going back to what is basics, which is Dan Kennedy and some of the people who've been doing this for a long time. That hasn't changed. The technology hasn't changed it, but the methodologies have stayed the same. So it's amazing. So going back to LinkedIn, right? Even including me, this is selfish for me too, what I'm going to learn from you. So I'm excited about it. There are so many ways you can building the relationship, right? Because people are saying, oh, you're going to build a relationship in LinkedIn. Does that mean just like messaging random people, getting the premier account so there's no cap on what you can do? But that's one side. The other side is a lot of people have this question about B2B, right? They're like, I have to go through so many gatekeepers. I have to go talk to a manager, then the director, then the VP, then the admin for the person who's going to make a decision. By the time I get there, it's like 3 months later, my sales cycle is so long. How do I deal with it? So I always tell them, find a way, whether direct lump email or what you talked about. So if you can give us some context on how we can build this relationship, that'd be wonderful.
So there's two ways that we've talked about a lot recently. One is always the referral method. So if you're trying to get into somewhere else, if you have your list of targets, right? Chet Holmes talks about the Dream 100. So if you have a top 25 list, you have a top 50, top 100, right? So whatever your customer wish list is, right? So you have to think about what does that wish list look like? So have an Excel spreadsheet, right? So think about that. The second thing when you're doing lead research, right? You want to think about, okay, let's pick a company. I'll just use Advantage Family, the Advantage companies. They're the ones that own the Dan Kennedy GTIC. And if I'm trying to reach the CEO, Adam Whitty, I can do three things. I can call him. I'm never going to get him on the phone. I can mail him a letter or a FedEx with lumpy mail, which you may or may not get a response. Or I can say, listen, this is what I would say. Hi, Adam. My name's Bryan. I'm connected with Nick Louise. He's your VP of Sales and former president. And Nick and I are friends, and I think it'd be really good for us to learn more about each other. I've attached to this LinkedIn message some information how I've helped other companies like yours. How could I just welcome you to have a look at it, right? And that's a little harder sell process, but it's certainly going to at least open the door to do that. It always best is to connect first. And if you use the second degree connection, you don't need to be a paid member to do that. You can just say, I'm a connection. You can do it two ways. You can just also say, I'm friends with Nick Louise. So if you guys are going to the NoBS website, you'll see Nick is there. I think he's their VP of Sales now, or Chief Revenue Officer. He was the president, but they've had some changes. Or you can go to that person and have them introduce you, which is ideally the best, right? So again, if you're connected to me and I'm connected to somebody you want, I'm a connector. I'm just going to say, I'm going to happy to do that for you because at some point I can help you. So that's the power of that connection in basically the most simple way. One of my clients just told me about 2 months ago, he was soliciting them. He was using this process we build to build this playbook, and we're talking to them on a consistent basis. All value. We try to send at least 3 or 4 value notes before we even broach the concept of getting to know them and talking on the phone or doing a Zoom call. And what we found out was he was leaving. He was an executive in a company and said, listen, the business has had a business shift. my time here is ending. And my client said, let's go to my LinkedIn. Where do you want to go? Hit all C-level contacts. And he said, well, I'm interested. I'm talking to people in these 3 companies. And he goes, oh, I know the CEO. Let's send them a note together. Here we go. You know, hey, Joe, Ralph here. We've been connected for a long time. I've been getting to know Raj, and he's got some changes coming up, and I know he's interested in talking to your company. I thought it'd be worthwhile for you two to have a discussion. You don't hear anything back. 3 weeks later, he gets a message going, hey, I got the job. He got an executive VP job. He didn't get a, you know, whatever. So again, the power of connection. A personal friend of mine here in Naples, Florida, got a job as the CEO of a hospital because he contacted the owner of this rehabilitation hospital, it's a privately held hospital chain, and said, listen, I'm from Naples. I know all the doctors. I know all the nurses. And I just certified another hospital 4 hours from my home. It would be my dream to come back to Naples and do it for you. And little did he know, he didn't even have an interview. He just said, come meet me on Friday. I want to hire you to be my CEO. So again, these are exceptional things, but you can definitely use the power to get directly to those people. But in no way did we try to sell either one of those, right? We were just trying to help. And that's the key today more than ever. You have to have the philosophy of value-based selling. You have to be attracting, not pursuing. You know, do you want to, and you guys are all getting those messages, you know, great to connect, let me sell you something. Great to connect, let me sell you something. And I use those as case studies, right? What not to do. Because there's a very little chance that you're going to do that.
So just for me to recap, I want to make sure, you said there's 2 methodologies. One is the referral method, and then maybe researching the company and then reaching out to who you think is a decision maker with the message that actually is bringing value to them, and then continue the conversation before you move it any further, right? Those are the 2?
Yeah.
Make sure. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're talking to the decision maker, you have to have, and again, it's hard to tell on a call like this, what's the value message? Why do I want to be connected to you, right? A common method is often, I want to connect with leaders. I want to connect with other people. Again, here's how LinkedIn works. It's a like-to-like thing. So we talked about job seekers, then there's the director level, and then there's the executives. So if you're the CEO of a software company, you're more inclined to connect with the CEO of the customer or the VP, right? So if you're the VP, you want to connect with the VP. So because you want to be a peer resource for them. And there's 3 types of people on LinkedIn. There's what I call the first level people, the job seekers. It's their online resume, and they're looking to solve a problem on LinkedIn, either get a job or get something done. The director levels, mid-level managers, upper level management, right? They're there to make sure that they get their job done. And if something goes wrong, they can either go to their peers for help or find an escape hatch to get to the next place and sell everyone else down the river. So, because they're either trying to get another director level job or move up, or they're trying to get into the C-suite. The CEOs have a completely different psychology. The CEOs are there for legacy and to help their team out. So they're either there for legacy because they want to create long-term value to their shareholders. They want to grow their company. You know, they're looking for an exit. So that kind of, you're playing to that psychology of that upper level person. Whereas the director level, you're playing to I want to help you get your job done so that you get to the C-suite. So you have to think a little bit about, and it's probably not enough time to go through today, but that's really the psychology of how do you do that. Now, with a let's just say a VP person, if you have a case study of a similar company in a similar situation where you're able to solve a problem and there's a common connection, couldn't be anything better, right? Hey, Joe, we solved the problem for another company. Not sure if it's even on your radar, but here it is, right? So those are some of the things you can do to basically go back to the old school of selling. How I learned how to sell 25 years ago was value first. I remember clipping newspaper articles and magazine trade journal articles that either people I worked with or worked around or knew were doing stuff, and sticking an envelope and mailing it to clients going, thought you would like this, right? Today that's nurturing, and we do it via email, we do it via video, whatever, but we just did a paper. And I will tell you, I won more business than lost because I was the classic Dan Kennedy. It's not that I want to buy. It's not when they buy. It's when they do buy, and they buy from you. because as business owners and entrepreneurs, we can't very rarely, let alone often, dictate the sales cycle. You talked about these 3-6 month sales cycles. We can only dictate when they're ready to buy, that they buy from us. Classic case is, how do I go from annoying pest to welcome guest? You can be an annoying pest on LinkedIn like crazy, and you're just road noise. They're going to turn you off, whatever. But if you provide some value and you do it in a soft way, a cadence, and I get it. We have to sell stuff to survive. You can certainly do that. So again, so the key takeaway there is like to like, understand the messaging of those 3 levels of people. First level person is really about their job and getting their stuff done. The director level is making sure that this stuff gets done right, so I don't lose my job or I look better for the next one. And that CEO, it's about legacy. That's the simplest way of saying it, right? How do I make sure that Joe, the CEO, has some type of, he's going to buy it, he's going to sell it, he's just going to grow it, he's in acquisition mode. Like you have to understand what he's about. And you oftentimes, if your customers are a little bit bigger, you can learn a little bit about the company by just doing Google. Google alerts are the best thing on the planet if you're selling to bigger companies. If your market's mid-market, they're a little harder to find, but you can do that because if you're selling to people that are on LinkedIn and they're active, they're going to be higher quality. Unlike Facebook, people on Facebook, that's a business to consumer play because they're on it for lifestyle, right? We're all on it right now to try to get away from the world, and then all we hear is nonsensical politics and the world's ending. And I'm longing for the days of like cooking videos. Like I'm looking for I want to see more dinners, more than anything else these days. So maybe I'll post some dinners tonight on my stuff. I'm gonna be on the grill tonight. I'm gonna post some grill pictures.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for recapping that. Right. So one of the things is I use often is Google Alerts, and actually taught my on Facebook Live some of the growth hack tools, and Google Alert is one of them.
Yeah.
So again, I know we don't have enough time, so I'm gonna try to get some more information for somebody who's, let's say, an early entrepreneur. He's got the business. They've got usually how most of my audience in India started. Like they either work for somebody, or they had clients, or they've done something for a few years for an end client, working as an employee, and then they say, you know what, there's an opportunity for me to do the same thing directly with the client. So they always start 1 or 2 clients, and they assume they're gonna somehow magically go from that 1 client to 100 clients. But what happens is after year 2 or 3, they're like, their lifeline is these 3 clients. One of them loses, they lose their business, right? So, and then now they are I had some people actually travel because they sell to clients in the United States. They traveled here, they met people, but they're here for 2 weeks, and then there's no follow-up. They went and talked to, they spent a lot of energy and money in it, but there was not a good way they were able to identify the end client. So if you are starting out, Bryan, and you say, okay, I have a business, I'm selling to B2B, because they wanted some things to be, they were so much in dire straits, they wanted sales like that month, which didn't work out, they had to close the business. So I want people to start now to know that this is not a short-term play, not just what you're saying. Business is not a short-term play, right? You need to invest in relationship and your business and for long-term rather than quarters. So if you're starting out, what would you do to kind of build, just because my audience is a little bit newer entrepreneurs or early entrepreneurs.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So the example you used was great. I had 1 to 2 customers. I was bootstrapping, moonlighting. I got 2 customers. I made enough revenue to start on my own. First thing I would do is sign up for a free 30-day trial to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, right? Do it for free for 30 days, right? Look at everything and every person in that company. Decide what they look like. So determine the simple stuff, the demographics, what industry they're in, how many employees they have, what their revenues are, like every possible thing you can know about that. And literally draw a picture of that on the wall. Draw a picture of what that customer looks like and learn as many things as you can about them. Then next to that, write down the person's name, do a little stick figure, find out what kind of car he drives, find out where he vacations, find out what college he goes to or supports, what sports team, if it's a guy. If it's a woman, find out what hobbies, if anything, that you can find out about them on the public web. You may not find it. This is where you have to get kind of down and dirty. It may not all be on LinkedIn, but it may be on Facebook or public sources. Colleges, everyone's loyal to their alumni. I see you're wearing a is that a UT hook 'em horns thing, right? So
Yes.
if someone says to you, hey, I'm also, whatever it is, yeah, sorry. If everyone says, you know, hey, I'm also a fellow alumni, that's great. Or if there's a big game this weekend and you get a message on, we do this actually all the time with a couple of our clients. We just pick a sport now when we got nothing, right? I was watching cricket in Australia the other day. Apparently, I didn't know a googly was a thing. Apparently it's a wicket and a googly are actual things in cricket. He's laughing because it's an Indian thing, right? So I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that was a joke from Jerry Seinfeld. The only American audience will know that. But I would learn as much as I possibly can about that customer, because if I go to you and say, hey, Raj, who's your big rivalry? Texas, the Aggies, or whoever it is.
Yeah.
Whoever, you know, I'm rooting for you guys this weekend. Go get them. Are you going to respond to that?
Absolutely.
You are, right? If there's a big game, if there's something social, because now all of a sudden, we're not trying to sell to them. We're trying to understand what makes them tick. We want to, when we do belly-to-belly sales calls, I talked about this in the call the other day, you know, a more experienced sales rep is looking all over. What is he looking for? Family pictures. Do they golf? Where do they go on vacation? Where do they go to college? You know, all this. Do they have a New York Giants thing on their, like anything I can learn about them that has nothing to do with business. Number one rule of business: people do business with people they trust. Absolutely. If you walk in saying, I'm trying to sell you this cup, what can I do to get you to buy this cup today? You're going to be based selling that on price. But if you can get past that and you get to understand them a little bit, you know, I had some customers who didn't really like the little soft talk in the beginning of a call. That's the most important part, right? Because now all of a sudden you're a valuable asset to the team, and that's just a different approach. LinkedIn allows you to do that because you can learn so many things about what they're doing. And then if you use Google Alerts, if there's something they're interested in or something the company does, now all of a sudden you can say, hey, Raj, I love that article your company put out last Friday in the Financial Times. I'm really I thought it was super cool, and I'm sure we'll get together soon. And then he's going to look at your profile and go, hey, wait, what does this guy do? I learned very early on in my career, I had a mentor who was a very high-level executive in a company called Merck & Company. They're, I don't know, fifth or sixth largest pharmaceutical company. They may be merging something right now. And he was the he was the director of purchasing, worked for the CFO. So he's like, I'm in every board meeting. I personally buy the airplanes, the trains and stuff. He said, listen, here's how this works. Myself and every one of my staff has anywhere between 5 and 7 priorities that are on their plate, and we're working on usually 2 or 3. He goes, so it just depends on where you are. He goes, now often, more times than not, sometimes it's vendors who have solutions to my problems who get built from 9 or 10 to 3 or 4. But you can't know that unless you're actually providing value about what you can do and how you can help. So, and because LinkedIn moves much slower than an ad, much slower than, you know, 2 phone calls or 5 cold emails or ads that just go by over and over and over again, it allows them to think about, are you the solution for this part of it? So when you get that customer avatar, just the demographic part, but you include that psychographic part, that psychology of what they're interested in, your road noise level, you're going to be here. You're going to be way above the crowd. Because now all of a sudden, oh, he slowed down and cared enough. And by the way, you can do this all for the average guy who's got 2 customers and wants to get to 10 and wants to go from 10 customers and wants to go to 20. If you spend an hour or 2 a day, you're going to be ahead of the game. It's key is consistency, right? You have to learn more about how can I do it, do it on a consistent basis. I keep looking at the project. Let's put the camera up there. So I think it's just a matter of how can I do that so that it's more predictable. And because LinkedIn moves at a much more measured pace, it allows you to do that. So was that helpful? So that yes. Demographic is key. Psychographic is key. Obviously, the other thing LinkedIn does, tells you their birthday, tells you their job changes, right? Also, if we posted anything. So if you have your top 25 customers, you need to make sure you're following everything they say. You know, looking at what they're doing, giving endorsements, right? Anything you can do to be somewhat relevant.
Perfect. So I have a couple more questions for us to wrap up. So one of the other things I wanted to understand is you turn around, there's like an app that helps you with the LinkedIn, they call it a LinkedIn connectivity, or just basically increasing contacts, automation. LinkedIn frowns upon it. Your account will get shut down. Those are the cons for it? I know you don't use apps, you use another process. Just curious about, in few words, if you can give us some insight on the best methodology at a high level to make this happen on an hour a day.
So first and foremost, LinkedIn's terms of service do not allow bots. They tolerate them in small doses. But as of April 9th, there's a handful of them. Linked Helper is a very popular one. DuckSoup's a very popular one. And they are all over them because they can detect it in your browser. They know you're running it, right? There's some off-browser solutions that tend to work, but you're just gaming the system, right? So there's nothing substitutes people. Henry Ford says people don't wear coveralls often because people are afraid of success because it wears coveralls. It looks an awful lot like work. And sometimes LinkedIn can be a little bit of work, but if your reward is big, right? If your customer value, if you're a new company and your customer value is worth $10,000 a year, would you spend 10 hours a week to get $10,000 a year? Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Would you do that for $20? Probably not. If you have a subscription, a SaaS product that your average customer value is worth $300, that's a different question, right? So that probably is the ad game and other stuff. But if you're selling a high ticket service, you're providing a lot of value in software, you're providing a complex solution, which I'm sure if someone's traveling from India and going to the US, they're providing a pretty complex solution with lots of people, lots of moving parts. Those deals can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it doesn't take but one to do that. Now, so given that, we're in the process of not quite ready for prime time. We've developed basically an Infusionsoft-like process for LinkedIn, not to do it for you, but to help manage that campaign. So if someone goes through step 1, step 2, step 3, we'll have a product out for the consumer probably later in the year to help them do that, for that solopreneur kind of stuff. Right now we're targeting those stage 2 companies that are probably $2 to $10 million in revenue. So probably a little above where your audience is, where we're doing it for them. But here's the secret sauce. Keep track of what you do. So if you have a 3-step process, create 3 tabs in an Excel spreadsheet and move Raj from step 1 to step 2, step 2 to step 3. The problem is once you get hundreds of contacts doing hundreds of messages, you got to spend some time doing it. But if you have some relevancy, you remove yourself from these so-called random acts of marketing and you create systems. And you and I know systems is the only thing that scales. That's the only thing that works. Because now all of a sudden you have a predictable sales process. And then if I talk to 100 people, 5 of them are going to be somewhat interested in my solution. And I understand what their budget might be and how I can solve it. And I think they're going to buy in a month or 2. So if you do that all the time, now all of a sudden you have a pipeline and now you have a business. So is it meant to replace all your other channels? Probably not. But if you're trying to use it as a complementary service, if I get a letter from you in the mail, an email and a LinkedIn request, all with a consistent theme, I'm going to say, how did that guy do that? Right? If you send them a birthday card 3 days before their birthday, because everyone puts their birthday on LinkedIn, now all of a sudden, how did you know that? And you send it off. So it's crazy. I call it the theory of I'm in the South and we like to talk about running away from bears. It's not that I can run away from the bear. I just have to run faster than you can. Or in Florida's case, or being from New York, we're going to knock you over. We're going to push you down, right? So,
and then run. That's funny.
Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful, right? So that I think gives them some nuggets of, really be value-based, right? Do whatever you can to be value-based. And from a cadencing point of view, we didn't talk about that. If you talk to people every 2 weeks, depends on your customer, depends on the size of your deal, every 2 weeks to 4 weeks, probably okay. Every once a week, maybe in the beginning, but then you're going to, if they haven't, I don't know how much you've taught them or going to teach them about the concept of magnetic marketing, but this concept of attraction, anything you can do to get them to raise their hand, pay attention to them more. So why did I talk about UT and Texas A&M? Well, because I talk about that, and then next month I talk about basketball, and I talk about spring football game being canceled. Now all of a sudden I've got their attention. So that's a very psychological edge we can take. Now I've got their attention. Maybe they're going to look at that. Hey, I've been talking to you for a while. You know what? we've been thinking, and this happened on a call this morning. We had 2 calls come into my client about just this morning about, hey, we've been talking about doing this, and now that we have a few minutes to breathe, we just want to understand, how could you help us? Because we're not really, we know the goals here, we know we're here, we don't really know what to go in between, and could you help us with some or part or all that? And all of a sudden they're having conversations because, I mean, one of them was 2 years in the making. Now the deal's big, right? Because when you have a big deal, that's just the nature of it. But that could be, I mean, again, that customer who goes from 2 customers to 3 instead of 2 customers to 1, right? Now all of a sudden, that creates that meaningful scale, right? That creates that business that makes sense for everybody. And that's the key part of that stuff. That's when you get the business you want. Every entrepreneur wants a predictable revenue stream. And sometimes it's hard to get if you don't do any marketing. Hope is not a strategy. Build it and they will come does not work. Right? It does not work. That marketing strategy doesn't work. No amount of SEO will beat outreach.
The build, they will come, or a solution looking for a problem is where a lot of entrepreneurs die, or the businesses are not entrepreneurs. So I said that's one of the main thing I teach them is how find the problem before you do anything else. Find the problem, custom avatar. Those are the top 2 things, because a lot of people build a solution and they're like, oh, why is nobody buying it? I know you built it for you as a customer, doesn't mean somebody else is going to buy it, right? So we have to, it's a lot of, the maturity of the ecosystem is not very there yet. So we're trying to get everybody there. But again, you have such wealth of knowledge and the time flew by. So I know people listening to this want to follow you, learn more from you. What is the best way they can do that?
The best thing they can probably do right now is if they go to my website, it's mvpinnercircle.com/LinkedIn. There's a free magnet there, a free lead magnet called 7 Ways to Power Up Your LinkedIn. So we talk about a lot of this stuff, not quite as much detail as we have today, but it'll give you the framework of what are some things you can do to really help understand how to be valuable to your customer. And keep an eye on me, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. You try connecting with me. I'm actually a little tougher to connect with these days, but you can certainly follow me. And that's another thing you can do with people without being connected to them. Hit the follow button. You don't have to be connected, but then you see what happens with them. So maybe you're not ready to connect with them, but you can follow them. And I encourage you to follow whoever, right? Because then all of a sudden you can keep an eye on them, and you don't want to feel like a stalker, right? One of the things that I find with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially if I'm guessing a lot of the stuff's technology, is the owners say, well, if I raise money and hire a sales team, I'll be set, right? There should be no better business development officer than you as the entrepreneur. Now, that doesn't mean you need to get 100, but you need to get the first 5 or 10 or whatever, because you should be the best representative of your business. And by the way, you don't have to cold call. You don't have to put a letter in place. Like, you don't have to be a marketer. You just have to be genuine and provide value, because if you and I sat across the table with each other with all the premises be done and just had a conversation, more entrepreneurs, they'd probably be pretty successful. But they can't ever, they feel like it's below them to get to that point. But they should be all means. Steve Jobs was the best salesperson at Apple, right?
Absolutely.
Bill Gates was the best salesperson at Microsoft, and neither one of those guys were socially awkward, and it took them years to even want to be in front of other people, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that's a common trait of really successful entrepreneurs, is they don't want to talk to people. LinkedIn, you just.
That's perfect. All right. Again, I'm going to put the link to mvpinnercircle.com/LinkedIn and your on your LinkedIn tag so that people can follow that. I didn't know you could follow people on LinkedIn. So that would be a great way to learn about your Dream 100 and follow them and understand what kind of stuff they post, right? So it would be a great hack to follow people. Again, Bryan, I really appreciate your time, and I know you're busy. So I thank you again for your time. And I know my audience are going to get a great amount of work from it. I did. So at least you've helped one person for now in this 30 minutes. So I really appreciate it. So, and I know a lot of
happy to help, Bryan. Glad to help.
Wonderful. All right, I'm going to. So Bryan, again, we'll cut this out, but thank you again for your time. I know
no problem.
You're losing your voice, so it was great connecting with you, regardless of what we learned. It was just great connecting with you.
Let's keep in touch. Yeah, absolutely.
So
let's keep in touch, because I think there's a lot of good stuff happening, and the entrepreneur world is a big world, and honestly, the direct response stuff, if you can teach more folks how to do that responsibly, you're going to help a lot of people, because they just, I know I deal with a lot of Indian companies, and I understand a little bit about their culture, and they're like, what can I, and I had an email that, what can I get you to do buy today? And I'm like, not that. And I get it's the culture part of it, but if they're going to deal with an American audience, right? It's the me to you. If they're going to sell to an American audience, they got to do what's going to appeal to me, not what's going to appeal to them.
It's almost like brute force is what they feel like. If I send him 20 emails, for some reason he's going to go from, I don't want to buy from you, to buy from you, or 20 phone calls. It's just like, you can't do that. Maybe you'll buy one or two people, but that's not a strategy that is going to be successful. So absolutely agree with it. So that's good feedback, because I see that happening, and it's working, because right now the digital marketing space in India is on the rise. So it's kind of lifting everybody up, right? But those who are going to actually make it past this downturn and all that, people who are actually going back to the basics of actually providing value. So I'm really hoping this will clean out some of the folks who are not really providing value. So, but you absolutely provided value, and I thank you. In spite of your voice going out, I'm glad you did it. Thank you again, and we'll stay in touch, okay?
Yeah, you too, Raj. Thanks a lot. Take care. Have a good night.
As soon as I get this video done, if everything in it, I'll send you a copy so you can use it as whatever, however you
want. Cool. I'll post it on LinkedIn. There we go. We'll post it on LinkedIn.
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
Sir. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.